A new front is opening in the Pacific. The U.S. Coast Guard is moving ships closer to China as Washington works to push back against the country's growing maritime influence.
The United States has announced it will invest up to $9 million to expand a Philippine Coast Guard facility in Palawan, while increasing military assistance to Manila to $100 million, the largest annual package in years. At the same time, American Coast Guard cutters are now operating from Subic Bay and Singapore, and George Washington Carrier Strike Group is sailing west of Luzon. Taken separately, these developments may seem unrelated. Together, they reveal a much bigger story. Washington is helping the Philippines build the infrastructure, logistics, and operational capacity needed to maintain a stronger and more sustained presence in the South China Sea.
A U.S. aircraft carrier is docking in Vietnam, the first time in 3 years, following its arrival a week ago in the South China Sea via the Luzon Strait. The U.S. ambassador to the Philippines said that the George Washington Carrier Group's capabilities are, quote, upholding freedom of navigation and overflight in the South China Sea.
The planned expansion of Buliluyan port into an intermediate logistics hub would allow Philippine Coast Guard vessels to refuel, undergo maintenance, and return to contested waters more quickly. It also comes as Manila prepares to receive up to 45 new patrol vessels from France and Japan, while expanding its use of unmanned systems with 9 U.S. supplied drone boats already delivered, and armed drones expected to follow. This reflects a strategy the United States has pursued for years. Rather than simply providing ships and equipment, Washington has increasingly focused on strengthening the logistics, maintenance, training, and infrastructure that allow partner nations to sustain long-term maritime operations. So why is Palawan becoming one of the most important strategic locations in the Indo-Pacific? Why is the United States investing so heavily in a Coast Guard facility instead of another naval base? And could this seemingly modest project reshape the balance of power in the South China Sea? Most headlines focused on one number, $9 million. At first glance, that doesn't sound like a game-changing military investment. It's not enough to buy a modern destroyer, a squadron of fighter jets, or a battery of advanced missiles. But that's exactly why this story is so easy to underestimate. The United States isn't simply funding another peer. It's helping the Philippines solve one of its biggest operational challenges, keeping its Coast Guard at sea for longer. For years, the Philippine Coast Guard has struggled to maintain a consistent presence across the South China Sea. Its fleet of 13 ocean-capable cutters must patrol a vast maritime area. Yet many of those vessels still rely on civilian ports in Palawan for refueling, repairs, and maintenance. Sharing docks with commercial shipping means valuable patrol time is often lost waiting for fuel, spare parts, or repair facilities. Washington's answer is not another warship. It's logistics. The planned expansion of the Coast Guard facility in Palawan, widely believed to include an intermediate logistics center at Buliluyan Port, would allow patrol vessels to refuel, undergo maintenance, load supplies, and return to sea much faster. Instead of spending days sailing back to distant bases, Philippine cutters could remain much closer to the waters they are tasked with protecting. It may not be the most dramatic military investment, but it could become one of the most important. Because in maritime competition, success isn't determined only by who has the largest fleet. It's often determined by who can stay at sea the longest. To understand why the United States is investing in Palawan, the first thing you need to do is look at the map. Stretching along the western edge of the Philippine archipelago, Palawan sits closest to the contested waters of the West Philippine Sea. Almost every major Philippine Coast Guard and Navy mission into the South China Sea begins from this island, making it the country's natural gateway to one of the world's most strategically important waterways. From Palawan, Philippine vessels can quickly reach key flashpoints such as Second Thomas Shoal, where repeated resupply missions have faced Chinese interference, the Spratly Islands, where several countries maintain competing outposts, and Reed Bank, an energy-rich area claimed by both Manila and Beijing. While Scarborough Shoal lies farther north, The growing pressure around that area reflects the broader maritime challenges the Philippines faces across the South China Sea. That is why Palawan has become so important. It is not simply a province on the map, it is the operational hub that connects Philippine forces to nearly every major mission in the West Philippine Sea. This is also why Buliluyan port has attracted growing attention. Already used as a staging point for Coast Guard operations, it is expected to evolve into a forward logistics hub, allowing patrol vessels to prepare for missions and return to contested waters much more efficiently. In simple terms, whoever strengthens Palawan strengthens the Philippines' ability to maintain a continuous presence in the South China Sea. And that is exactly what this new investment is designed to achieve. Imagine a Philippine Coast Guard cutter returning from a patrol near the Spratly Islands. Instead of pulling into a dedicated military base for refueling and repairs, it often has to dock at a civilian port, competing with commercial cargo ships for space. Every delay means less time where it matters most on patrol in the South China Sea. For years, this has been one of the Philippine Coast Guard's biggest operational challenges. Despite protecting one of the world's largest exclusive economic zones, the Coast Guard operates only 13 ocean-capable cutters and has lacked a dedicated forward maintenance facility in Palawan. When ships require repairs or routine servicing, they often have to sail back to larger facilities elsewhere in the country, reducing patrol time and slowing operational response. That is exactly the gap the United States is trying to close. Plans for Buliluyan Port call for an intermediate logistics and maintenance hub where Coast Guard vessels can refuel, undergo repairs, replenish supplies, and quickly return to sea. The project is part of a broader effort that also includes upgraded small boat facilities along western Palawan and improvements to the fuel depot at Antonio Bautista Air Base, one of the Philippines' 9 Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement sites. The difference becomes even clearer when compared with China. Over the past decade, Beijing has built an extensive network of ports, airfields, and military facilities across the South China Sea, allowing its Coast Guard and naval forces to sustain operations for extended periods. The Philippines has operated with a much smaller logistics network, making it far more difficult to maintain the same operational tempo. That is why this investment matters. It isn't simply about constructing another facility. It is about reducing downtime, increasing endurance, and allowing Philippine vessels to spend less time traveling for repairs and more time protecting the waters they are tasked to defend. By now, it's clear that the expansion of Buliluyan Port is only one part of a much larger effort to strengthen the Philippines' maritime posture. The $9 million investment is designed to create more than a larger pier. It supports a forward logistics network where Coast Guard vessels can refuel, undergo maintenance, replenish supplies, and return to the South China Sea more quickly. Alongside the port expansion, U.S. planning documents outline upgrades to maintenance facilities, improvements to fuel infrastructure at Antonio Bautista Air Base, and expanded support sites across western Palawan. These projects are all connected. Together, they create the infrastructure needed to sustain maritime operations closer to contested waters instead of relying on distant bases deeper inside the Philippine archipelago. Washington is also backing that infrastructure with long-term financial support. By the end of fiscal year 2026, foreign military financing for the Philippines will reach $100 million, a $60 million increase over previous annual levels. The funding is intended to strengthen military modernization, improve operational readiness, and enhance the Philippines' ability to protect its maritime interests. Taken together, these investments reveal a broader strategy. Rather than focusing on a single project, the United States is helping build the logistics, infrastructure, and institutional foundation needed to support a more capable Philippine maritime force for years to come. But infrastructure alone cannot change the balance at sea. It still needs a larger fleet to make full use of it. And that fleet is already on its way. Everything the United States is helping build today is designed for the fleet the Philippines expects to operate tomorrow. At present, the Philippine Coast Guard fields 13 ocean-capable cutters, a modest force responsible for safeguarding one of the world's largest exclusive economic zones. Those vessels support law enforcement, protect Filipino fishermen, conduct search and rescue missions, and escort resupply operations to Philippine outposts in the South China Sea, all while facing growing pressure from Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels. But Manila is preparing for a major transformation. Over the coming years, the Philippine Coast Guard expects to receive up to 45 new patrol vessels from France and Japan, representing one of the largest maritime modernization efforts in its history. A fleet of that size would allow the Philippines to patrol more frequently, respond faster to incidents, and maintain a more consistent presence across contested waters. However, new ships alone are not enough. Every additional cutter requires maintenance, fuel, spare parts, repair facilities, trained crews, and reliable command and control support. That is why Washington has invested not only in new capabilities, but also in the infrastructure needed to sustain them. Projects such as the proposed logistics hub at Buliluyan Port, upgraded fuel facilities at Antonio Bautista Air Base, and expanded support sites across Palawan are designed to ensure that a larger Coast Guard fleet can remain operational much closer to the South China Sea. These investments also prepare the Philippines for the next phase of maritime operations. As new patrol vessels, fast response craft, and future unmanned systems enter service, they will rely on the same logistics network now taking shape across Palawan. In many ways, the United States is helping the Philippines build more than a larger Coast Guard. It is helping build a force that can stay at sea longer, respond more quickly, and sustain operations in contested waters with far greater confidence than before. Because the strength of a fleet is measured not only by the number of ships it owns, but by how long those ships can remain on station when they are needed most. The investments in Palawan are not only preparing the Philippines for a larger Coast Guard, they are also preparing it for a different way of operating in the South China Sea. In recent years, the United States has steadily expanded support for the Philippines' unmanned capabilities. Since 2024, Washington has transferred at least 9 unmanned surface vessels, or USVs, to the Philippine Navy. Additional unmanned systems are planned for the Philippine Marine Corps and potentially the Army, while armed drones could begin arriving as early as 2027, according to USNI News. These technologies could significantly expand the Philippines' maritime reach. Unlike conventional patrol vessels, unmanned surface vessels can conduct surveillance, monitor contested waters, gather intelligence, and support maritime operations without exposing large crews to unnecessary risk. Armed drones add another layer of capability by providing persistent aerial surveillance and faster situational awareness over vast areas of the South China Sea. But the real significance goes beyond the technology itself. The United States and the Philippines are gradually shifting toward a more networked maritime strategy, one that combines traditional patrol vessels with unmanned platforms, real-time surveillance, and improved logistics to strengthen maritime domain awareness and respond more quickly to developments at sea. The infrastructure now taking shape across Palawan provides the foundation for that transition. As unmanned systems become a larger part of Philippine maritime operations, forward support facilities will help keep both conventional and autonomous platforms operating closer to contested waters. This marks an important evolution in the U.S.-Philippines partnership. The goal is no longer simply to deploy more ships. It is to build a smarter, more connected maritime force capable of maintaining a persistent presence across one of the world's most contested waterways. Because in the South China Sea, the advantage increasingly belongs not only to the side with the largest fleet, but also to the side with the best information, the fastest response, and the ability to remain present every single day. If you're looking at these developments from Beijing, the story looks very different. China is unlikely to see the expansion of the Coast Guard facility in Palawan as just another infrastructure project. Instead, it is likely to view it as another step in the steady strengthening of the U.S.-Philippines security partnership. From China's perspective, every improvement to Philippine logistics has a direct operational effect. Better maintenance facilities, faster refueling, and stronger support infrastructure mean Philippine Coast Guard vessels can remain at sea longer, respond more quickly to incidents, and maintain a more persistent presence around disputed features. That matters because Beijing has spent years trying to establish a continuous presence across much of the South China Sea through regular Coast Guard patrols, maritime militia deployments, and expanding infrastructure on disputed features. A more capable Philippine maritime force makes that objective more difficult. Chinese analysts are also likely to view these developments within a broader regional context. Although the Palawan project is publicly presented as supporting Coast Guard and maritime law enforcement operations, improved logistics and mobility would also have value during a wider regional crisis. Combined with expanded U.S. access to Philippine facilities under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, closer military cooperation, and more frequent joint activities, the project reinforces an alliance that has become increasingly important in the Indo-Pacific security landscape. For that reason, Beijing has consistently criticized deeper U.S. Philippines defense cooperation, arguing that greater American involvement risks increasing regional tensions and encouraging external interference in disputes that China believes should be resolved directly between the parties involved. Whether China responds with stronger diplomatic protests, more aggressive Coast Guard patrols, or intensified gray zone operations remains uncertain. What is clear is that the expansion of Palawan's Coast Guard infrastructure is no longer just about improving one Philippine facility. It has become another indicator of a changing strategic balance in the South China Sea. The expansion of the Coast Guard facility in Palawan did not happen overnight. It is the latest step in a much broader response to years of rising tensions across the South China Sea. Repeated confrontations around Second Thomas Shoal and Scarborough Shoal have demonstrated how quickly routine patrols can turn into dangerous standoffs. Philippine resupply missions have faced water cannon attacks, close-range maneuvering, and persistent shadowing by Chinese Coast Guard vessels, while Filipino fishermen have continued to operate under growing pressure in disputed waters. According to the Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative, China's presence around Scarborough Shoal has intensified further in 2026, including floating barriers, navigation buoys, and temporary research structures, part of a broader effort to maintain a near-continuous presence without escalating to open conflict. These encounters have reinforced an important lesson for Manila. Defending maritime claims is not simply about dispatching more patrols. It requires ships that can remain at sea longer, return to contested waters more quickly, and sustain operations over time. That realization has reshaped the U.S.-Philippines security partnership. Earlier U.S. initiatives focused on improving the fundamentals, maintenance facilities, logistics infrastructure, fuel storage, training, and small boat facilities across Palawan. More recent projects have expanded that effort through the proposed logistics hub at Buliluyan port, upgraded support infrastructure, increased military financing, and preparations for a larger, more modern Philippine maritime force. Rather than responding to each incident individually, Washington and Manila are building the capacity to sustain long-term operations in the South China Sea. The cooperation has become increasingly visible at sea as well. U.S. Coast Guard cutters now operate from Subic Bay and Singapore after being redeployed from Bahrain, ending a 2-decade Middle East mission and shifting greater attention to the Indo-Pacific. At the same time, the US George Washington Carrier Strike Group has been conducting operations west of Luzon, while larger joint exercises, expanded maritime domain awareness, intelligence sharing, and closer operational coordination continue to deepen interoperability between the two allies. Taken together, these developments reveal a clear strategic shift. The United States is no longer focused only on helping the Philippines respond to the next confrontation. It is helping Manila build the logistics, infrastructure, operational endurance, and alliance integration needed to maintain a continuous presence in one of the world's most contested maritime regions. That may ultimately be the most important consequence of the Palawan project. It is not simply about expanding a Coast Guard base. It is about strengthening the long-term ability of the Philippines and its treaty ally to preserve stability, deter coercion, and remain present where strategic competition is unfolding every day. Because in today's South China Sea, the contest is no longer measured only by who possesses the most ships. It is increasingly measured by who can sustain presence, support allies, and remain on station long after the headlines have faded.